In this short video, I will show you how to set up command line interface to Actifio using Windows and PuTTY. Now, to set this up, we will need two pieces of software, and one of them is called PuTTygen. And this software is used to generate open SSH keys. We need a private key and a public key. That's two separate key files. One of them we retain, which is effectively the private key, which you can think of as your door key. And the other one we need only once, well, effectively only once, which is the public key, which is, you can think of it as the door, the lock in your front door. So we create these two keys and effectively give the public key to Actifio, and then we retain the private key and use it to authenticate to Actifio when we want to log on to Actifio with our command line interface. So the way this works is, first up, we need to get PuTTY on our Windows box. And the simplest thing to do is Google for PuTTY, go to the the PuTTY download page, and from the download page, my recommendation is to grab this thing called the Windows installer and install that file, which is here putty63installer.exe. So previously I've downloaded it and installed it, and now you can see I've got PuTTY. And I've got several things in here. I've got the PuTTY binary, and I've got PuTTygen. And PuTTygen is what I'm interested in using. So I start up PuTTygen, and I suggest I need a SSH2 RSA key, 1024-bit, so the default is fine. I hit generate, and now I move the mouse like a crazy man until this green bar has completely moved to the right-hand side. Now, once that's done, I will have a truly random SSH key, which I can then use to set up authentication. Now, as I said, it will give us two things, a public key and a private key. Now, you could choose to simply copy and paste the public key and use it only once. I do recommend saving it. So if we save the public key, I'll simply call it public key Anthony and V, and with the private key, and don't worry about the passphrase, again I can call this private key Anthony V. And then what I do is I grab this and I save it. So I'm going to do try this again, grab this, right click and do copy. Now I start up Actifio. Now in Actifio we need to go to the domain manager, this guy down here. I need to go to the cog and choose new user. And you can see the new user panel is open right now, new user 5. That's a very boring name, so what we're going to do is change that. We'll make that Anthony V. Give Anthony V a password. Now remember, this user can be used to log on to the GUI as well as the CLI. Hit save. That's setting up the first part of my user. Now, a common mistake when people set up users is they hit save at this point on this screen and they think, I'm done. And while, yes, they are done, however, the user has no role and no organization. So you need to go to the roles and choose a role. And if you want to be all-powerful, choose administrator, hit save. I've now given that user, Anthony V, a role, which is administrator. Before it was basic. Anthony V really couldn't do anything. And then I go to the orgs panel, and I'm going to choose which org the user is in. Now, the default is public, which actually means you can't really see any of the constructs. So I've saved all, that's fine. So I've now set up the user from a GUI perspective, but from a command line interface perspective, I need to do one more thing, which is add CLI access. And in here, I paste in the public key. So remember, we have the public key and the private key. The public key we're giving to Actifio. Hit submit. And what now happens is this public key is now associated with that user ID, Anthony V. So that's all done. Now, I can close off PuTTygen, and I can start up PuTTY. And what I'm going to do with PuTTY is I'm going to create a new save session, which I'll call Anthony V dev. I'm going to point it at a host name, which is Anthony V at, and here I'm going to put in, obviously your server will be different to mine. I'm going to put in a development machine, port number 22, SSH. That's all the standard defaults, that's fine. I go to here, SSH, and in SSH I have to go to auth. And in auth I can see the private key file for authentication, hit browse, choose my private key. You can see that private key right there. Go back to session, hit save, and bang, I've now set up a session. I can now open that session. It's going to connect to the machine. This is the first time I've used that key file. And you can see I've now PuTTY connected to my development box. Now, obviously you're there going, well, now what? I could type help, and help will tell me the two standard commands, UDS info and UDS task, that I can run. I could also do report list, which shows me the simple Actifio report generator. It's a community-driven tool to create on-demand reports. If I'm still confused about what to do, the best thing to do is to go to the web page, the resource center. If you point your browser directly at the Actifio cluster IP address, get the zipped copy data storage documentation library, open up the CLI guide, and if I show the CLI guide, you can see here is the 5.1 CLI reference, and it's got great information on how to use the command line interface. All right, hopefully that's been useful. Thank you very much for your time.